Suppose I stop entirely doing plugs for the podcast on social media. Suppose I stop doing anything on social media except posting pictures of myself scantily clad with your crop tops, with your short shorts, bikini photos. Suppose I pour my creative energy into just posting those thirst traps, because in my travels, it sure seems to me that you get a lot more mileage out of a thirst trap than you do out of positive talk. Or suppose I eschew the positive talk, the focus, the locus of this podcast. Suppose I do that and I jump aboard the toxic train, start doing attacks about politics, start doing the clickbait headlines, stoop to the lowest common denominator, and focus my program upon celebrity gossip, TV shows, rage bait. Suppose I turn this whole thing into some sort of carnival of sin, carnival of toxicity, carnival of negativity, because as far as I can tell out there in the world, kids, that seems to be what sells, and that seems to be what makes people successful, not this Pollyanna, positive talk, spirituality, BS mumbo jumbo. Suppose I do all of that. Suppose I give in to the rampant cynicism and turn my whole ethos in that dark direction. Yeah, the cynicism. Seeing a lot of cynicism out there, kids. Hearing a lot of cynicism in the world. And I gotta be honest with you, I get it. I'm not going to do any of those things, by the way. That's a hook. That's a lead. And if I could get you at least associating thirst traps with my content, that might help at least peripherally boost me a little bit. If you associate sexy photographs with my voice. I want to do a quick one about cynicism because A, I'm a recovering cynic, so I'm not calling any kettles black here. I'm just encountering a lot of cynicism out there, and I get it. I 100% get it in this day and age, in this time. I get why people are cynical. I get people looking at politics. I get people looking at the manipulation of hate, at the weaponization of justice, at what would seem to be injustice, what would seem to be rich and powerful people getting away, allegedly, with all sorts of heinous crimes and activities, while those of us who are not rich and powerful keep getting squeezed tighter and tighter and tighter. And if I continue on this train, I am going to revert to cynicism, because I understand 100%, 100p, why you may be out there looking at the world right now and feeling cynical about it. Because it does feel a lot of the time like the darkness wins. It seems like the bad guys are winning everywhere you look. It seems like what should be our values and what should be our priorities in the world as human beings are kicked aside and replaced with this slave-like devotion to wealth, to power, to fame, to celebrity, to gossip, to all of those lesser angels. And I understand why people would be cynical, and I don't want to be that. And so this episode is partly a diatribe, partly a caution, partly just a discussion and observation of cynicism, because I have been a cynical person in the past. And I am tempted at times to be cynical now. You know, I make jokes about launching an OnlyFans, but I'm only half kidding. Not that I would do that, but I do see that that sort of content gets way more attention than the positive talk that I try to do. Sometimes that can be discouraging, or the salacious content, or the political content, or the angry content. All of this stuff seems to generate a hell of a lot more attention than my little program does, and that can be discouraging. Maybe you're a creative out there and you feel as though you're putting forth useful work into the world, and that is being, if you're a songwriter, ignored in favor of the latest lower the bar rap or pop song that is just salacious for the sake of it, that is titillating for the sake of it, that is empty, vapid, sexy, and that just pushes your content right out of the way. I get it. I get how the lowest common denominator seems to be winning all of the time. I'm getting tired of being on YouTube and ads for online casinos. Online betting, online gambling is frigging everywhere. That's as cynical as it gets. Let's try to make a quick buck and let's take everybody's quick buck. I get the overwhelm with cynicism, and I'm tempted towards it myself a lot of the time. I have to pull myself away from that because I've been a cynical person. I have been a cynical person, and I have found that cynicism does not lead to good places, does not lead to happy places. And especially as I get older and I encounter people my own age who have fallen into a cynicism about getting older, fallen into a cynicism about life not having worked out perhaps the way they wanted, buying into this idea that it's too late and letting that become their perception, letting that bitterness, I don't even know if cynicism is the right word. There is a pervasive bitterness that I'm running across in people that I'm tempted towards myself at times, and I have to try really hard to pull myself away from that, especially as a person who has been cynical. You grow up in the evangelical Christian world, you are taught judgment upon society. You are taught to eschew, love the sinner, hate the sin, which is just about the most arrogant and condescending thing I can think of. Love the sinner, hate the sin. Love that poor sod, but hate his or her behavior because you're so morally superior. I find myself becoming cynical right now, but it's a default setting. It is a default woven into the wiring, woven into the hardware setting for me coming out of a judgmental world to default to a judgmental perspective upon the world. I don't want to be that because I've found that it leads to dark places. I've found that it leads to bitterness, depression, anger, self-defeat, hopelessness. All of that is the road that cynicism leads to. And I'm seeing it in the world. I'm hearing it. I'm encountering it amongst people. And I want to put up a little roadblock right now. Now, I can tell you that cynicism is toxic, even if it's in some ways justified right now, or at least understandable. I can tell you those things, and I can tell you those things from my own experience, but maybe you want something a little more academic. Maybe you want some reassurance from somebody with letters behind their name. So I was looking online. I found an article by a cat called Bruce Hutchinson, PhD, published in Psychology Today. The article titled, "Cynicism Can Be Toxic and Sometimes Fatal." You don't have to take it from me, take it from a PhD. I'll quote just a little bit from it. "Cynicism is a serious problem because it is often toxic and bad for our physical and mental health. It is associated with poor health, poor habits, chronic depression, and heart attacks." The BBC reported in 2007 that a study of 6,814 people published in the Archives of Internal Medicine suggested that cynical people may be more likely to lead unhealthy lifestyles like smoking or suffering from obesity, which creates more risk factors for heart disease. Other studies have found that cynicism was associated with an increased risk of total mortality and cancer-related mortality, and may be more likely to develop dementia. Cynical people also have been found to make smaller incomes than more optimistic people. Many depressed people are chronically cynical, and this prolongs depression. That's Bruce Hutchinson, PhD. You want more? I got more. This is Kyle D. Killian, PhD, also in Psychology Today. C is for cynicism, how it can impact your well-being. Looking at the impact of cynicism on indices of health in first responders, Padmanabhanuni and Pretorius in 2024 found that cynicism was significantly associated with anxiety, depression, and fatigue, and Dangle et al. In 2018 found that greater levels of cynicism lead to rigidity or cognitive inflexibility, leading to poor capacity to adapt and to the sequelae, I don't even know what that word is, of hopelessness, depression, and suicidality. It is also associated with greater substance use, such as alcohol consumption, and elevated risk of death. So, quote, everything in moderation probably applies to cynicism too. Maybe, maybe not. I have my own thoughts on the dangerous effects of cynicism. My primary feeling is that cynicism will keep you stuck in life. Especially as you get older, cynicism will just keep you stuck. If there are things that you want to pursue, if there are things you want to aspire to, and you approach life with this cynical attitude, your response will be, what is the point? What is the point of trying to go for a different job? What is the point of trying to live that dream that I lament not living 20 years ago? What is the point of trying to find a spouse? What is the point? What is the point? What is the point? If you're a cynical person, the definition of cynicism is feeling as though other people, institutions, whatever, work from pure self-interest and are full of lies. That is not the Webster's Dictionary definition, but that is fundamentally cynicism. This belief that everybody is working from self-interest, that institutions are lying to you, also working to their own self-interest, and we're seeing a lot of evidence of that. I'm not denying it, but it is a fundamentally negative perception of other people's motivations, a negative perception of potential, and for me, it's a trap. For me, it is a trap. To be cynical is to become stuck where you are. And that's an awful place to be, because where you are is having this perception that the world is bad, toxic, and negative, that people are awful, that institutions are fraudulent and lying to you, that the whole game is rigged, that, as George Carlin said, it's a big club and you're not in it. This is the cynical approach to the world, and so it keeps you stuck. It keeps you from moving forward because you feel like there's no point in trying anything. There's no point in doing anything. It's too late to do anything. You can't succeed. And all of that on a certain level makes a lot of sense. But what is underneath that perspective? What is underneath this cynicism? And I used to run a blog called The Scratched Cynic. I forget who said if you scratch a cynic, you'll find a wounded optimist. So I was the scratched cynic for a while. And in a lot of cases, people who become cynical have been wounded. They have become hurt. They have seen things not work out. They have grown up in houses where people were angry and awful. They have learned through observation or experience that things don't work out and that the bad guys win. And that is a perception. That is a perception that you have either cultivated yourself or has been bred into you. I grew up in the church. Of course, I was going to grow up cynical because I was taught in the church that everybody beyond the walls of that church was evil, needed saving, and was going to hell. And I also was evil and needed saving, by the way, but I had the luxury of having been saved. One of the chosen. But everything out there, all the institutions, all the pastimes, all the hobbies, all the movies, all the music, all of the dancing, all of the people were evil and immoral and awful and leading to this eternal damnation, and they all needed to be saved. This is an intense judgment upon the world, and so some of us come into cynicism honestly. Some of us have that implanted in us to take a negative view in the world, of the world, which is so superior, by the way. Cynicism can present as such superiority, such ego. And when you're coming into the world with superiority and ego, that's just a bad vibe, man. You are not going to attract to yourself good stuff when you are walking into the world with this sense of superiority and ego. And that is, in a lot of cases, what cynicism becomes. But again, if you scratch a cynic, you find often a wounded optimist. And so some people have been wounded. And cynicism can become for others kind of a defense mechanism. It's like they are frightened of the world, or they are frightened to try that thing. And so they adopt, rather than admit to themselves that they are frightened, rather than admit to other people that they are frightened, or that they have self-doubt, or that they're concerned, they adopt a cynicism. Dude, I would join a band, but everybody I've ever been in a band with is such a dick. Or I hate playing shows to nobody. Or nobody can write any good damn songs. Or nobody wants to friggin' rehearse. There's a million cynical ways to say, I'm afraid to join a band. There's a million cynical ways to say, I'm afraid to go back to school. There's a million cynical ways to say, I don't feel like writing a book, or I don't feel like asking somebody out. Great way to defend yourself from being rejected is to be cynical about dating. Oh, there's nobody on the market. There's no good people left. There's no good men left. There's no good women left. Men are all just dogs and pigs. Men just ghost you. Women are awful. All they want is your money. Oh, scratch that cynic. Scratch that perception. And what do you find underneath it? Somebody who got rejected by their last girlfriend. Somebody who got turned down by a date. Or perhaps something more catastrophic than that. A lot of people use cynicism as this defense mechanism. Protect themselves from taking a chance by throwing up this wall of bitterness, this wall of cynicism that is their justification for not trying the thing. And perhaps not meeting that person of their dreams. Perhaps not having that amazing musical experience like I've had. Perhaps not getting that job that they actually want. Perhaps not starting that business that is their dream and their dharma. Perhaps missing out on everything because they're afraid to risk anything. Cynicism is a great excuse to not take any risks. And that's the other thing. Cynicism forms a lovely excuse for failing. For not trying. It's like, I work this job and I've worked it for a long time and I frigging hate it. And I know I could do a hell of a lot better. And what I really want to do was that. But instead of admitting that I was afraid to go for that, or I didn't believe in my ability to have that, let's throw up some cynicism. Oh, well, they don't hire people my age. Or you could attack immigrants. I've heard that recently. Can't get a job because immigrants, that's an easy scapegoat, isn't it? And I want to go there. Cynicism is a great excuse. I haven't been able to do this thing because that person's fault, that person's fault, that person's fault. It's a great reason to not take any responsibility for not trying. It's a great way to take responsibility for not doing the work it took to get that gig. Oh, well, I got shut out because. I see that all the time. I hear that all the time. And I have used cynicism in every possible one of these ways. As a defense mechanism, as a cover for fear, as a way to not take any risks, as a justification for not doing or not succeeding at something. I've done them all, man. I have a PhD in living a cynical life. And it didn't lead me to good places. And I look around, and especially as I talk to people my own age, this weird 50-something age, where they're beginning to feel as though they've missed the chance. They've missed the boat. They've missed their opportunity. And I'm here to tell you that you frigging haven't. But rather than pluck up the courage, rather than take personal responsibility, rather than own what they have not done yet so far, they throw up this cynicism. They adopt this negative, toxic attitude about how it's impossible, or the game is rigged, or you can't possibly make it, and it's too late. And you scratch away at that little bit of cynicism, and underneath you find a person who just simply doesn't believe, or doesn't actually want that thing, just wants something to be upset about. Somebody who has not done any real self-critical thought. Somebody who has not developed self-awareness. Somebody who is knee-jerking into an excuse for why life isn't the way they want it to be. And I have done that. I, at times, am still tempted to do that. Why is my podcast not growing? Well, I can't compete with celebrities who have big budgets. That's partly true, but it's not the reason my podcast is not growing. The reason my podcast is not growing is a plethora of reasons. It's not the right content. It's not advertised right. I'm not doing titles right. I'm not doing SEO right. But the common denominator in all of that is I. I. And what a lot of cynical people don't do is take the I and own that. Cynicism makes everything about you. I was going to do a history of what cynicism is, because cynicism was actually a school of philosophical thought, or at least a philosophical fad at one point in ancient Greece. Ancient Greece was a wild place. There's these little sects of philosophy kind of roaming around Athens, yelling at each other, coming up with different ways to think and be. Kind of a compelling time to be alive, I bet. The original Cynics were this sect of philosophers who were looking around at Greek society, much like you may be looking around at our current society, and saying, this sucks. Everybody's frigging priorities are wrong. Everybody's after the money. Everybody's after the fame. Everybody's after the wealth. Everybody's after the reputation. And everybody is operating for these very thin priorities, these thin values. And the Cynics, started by a cat, I think largely attributed to a cat called Antisthenes or Antisthenes. I like having an anti in it. 445 to 365 BC. He's kind of the guy who started this, and then it was taken up by Diogenes, taken up by Crates of Thebes, who we have talked about before when I did an episode about Stoicism. These cats were the thinkers behind the Cynic philosophy. And the word cynic, incidentally, derives from the ancient Greek word kynikos. I don't speak Greek, so I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Kynikos. Kynikos. Cynicos. I don't know. Which literally means dog-like. Derived from kion, the Greek word for dog. So these cats rejected all sorts of what seemed to be the values of modern society. So they eschewed wealth, they eschewed comfort, they eschewed social convention, they eschewed the social mores, they chased nothing except a simple life, natural as it was intended. And so they roamed around like dogs. They lived like dogs. They lived in filth, they lived on the streets. And so they started calling them basically the dog philosophers, the Cynics. And the idea was they prioritized what they called eudaimonia. Take my word for it. Lucidity, clarity, virtue. What they chased was a definition of virtue, which was living simply, living in nature, communing with the supernatural, I presume. And it rejected entirely society's focus on acquiring wealth and status and power and reputation and all of those things. And not only did they reject those things, they went out of their way to be aggressive about it. One of their priorities was shamelessness, impudence and shamelessness. And so they would just go around carrying staffs when you weren't supposed to carry a weapon anymore. And they would go around in their robes, and they would be loud and disruptive, and they would reject all the conventions of society in a very shameless, very deliberate, very in-your-face kind of a way. And they rejected all the values. Crates of Thebes was wealthy, and he rejected a huge wealthy family background, a life of complete luxury, to go live on the streets with his girlfriend. People were friggin' hardcore, man. We don't really have this anymore. Like back in the day, folks who adopted a personal credo, a personal philosophy, lived it hard. And so these cats were living like dogs. These cats were living like dogs. And they were the dog philosophers. And their whole thing was a rejection of what they saw as the thin and empty values of Greek society. Their emphasis was on this purity, this morality, this virtue, this communing with nature. And there was a lot of focus there. But over time, this idea of cynicism has left out the focus on virtue and just focused on the critique of society. That's what we get with modern cynicism. It is a critique It is a judgment upon modern society, not an aspiration to virtue necessarily, just a general critique. And that in itself is very cynical because it doesn't offer any frigging solutions, does it? All it does is criticize without offering any sort of solution to the criticism or solution to the frigging problems. And I, at least, have some ideas on how we might be a little less cynical because it leads to dark places. Cynicism will hold you back. And as you get older and you begin to lament time passing and you feel like it's too late, now is the time to do the thing. Now is the time not to be cynical, but to be optimistic. Now is the time to throw caution to the wind. Now is the time to go for it. But if you are rooted in cynicism, you're just a drag, man. You are just a drag to be around if all you're doing is complaining, if all you're doing is making excuses for stuff. And again, I've done it and I get it and I'm tempted all the frigging time. You're a drag to be around even by yourself. And you're not going for stuff that might make you feel happier. If only you just plucked up a little courage, put yourself out there. So I am trying to pull you away from cynicism. If you don't know how, I got a few thoughts on that from my own lived experience, okay? I've got a PhD in being me. That's not offered anywhere because nobody else wants to be me. First thing, if you want to be less cynical, is to make the frigging decision to be less cynical. It is a decision. Your perception, it may have been coded into you as a child the way it was coded into me. It may have been coded into you by life. You may have adopted this as a self-protection. You may have adopted this as a defense mechanism. You may have done all of that subconsciously. You can undo that. But what you have to do is make the decision right now that I'm not going to be cynical anymore. I am not going to be bitter anymore. I am not going to be negative anymore. And that's an empowering decision. It'll feel good in the moment, and then you'll struggle. You'll struggle if this has been your habit for 40 years, if this has been your default setting for 4 decades, to be negative, to see the darkness, to not see the silver lining, to make fun of people who do. It's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to change that habit, but it is possible to do, and it requires a certain amount of self-awareness. You have to check yourself saying, oh, I'm having a cynical thought about the driver in front of me. Ever notice how everybody else on the road is an idiot? Ever notice how nobody knows how to drive except you? And then when somebody honks at you for something, you're like, what's that guy's problem? Well, to that guy, you're an idiot who doesn't know how to drive. That's a place to catch yourself. It's like you're behind somebody who's going slower than you want to. Not breaking any laws, not causing any trouble, just going 10K slower than you want to. And you're like, this guy's an idiot. There's a moment to have a little self-awareness. Not an idiot, just comfortable going slower than you. You are not entitled to the friggin' highway, all right? It belongs to all of us. Some people go slower than you. Chill your ass out. That's one place. You know, when you begin to have a cynical thought about something at work. Oh, my boss is a friggin' idiot. If they would just listen to me, but they're stupid. They don't know anything. Yeah, they do. They know a lot, actually. They have a different opinion, possibly. And instead of calling the person an idiot, maybe offer some constructive solution to the problem. This is self-awareness. This is catching yourself. When you see something online, like a thirst trap with 50,000 likes, while my post of encouragement has 4. And your reaction is, people are so vapid. You know, people have no values whatsoever. Check yourself. That's a person doing their thing. You're doing your thing. You have to have this self-awareness. So A, make the decision that you're not going to be cynical anymore. B, have the self-awareness to recognize when you are being cynical. That's a hard thing to do because that requires you to take responsibility. Cynicism is about not taking responsibility. Cynicism is about everything being everybody else's fault, right? Everything is everybody else's fault. I didn't get that job because that guy. I didn't win that contest, that competition, because that guy was all friendly with the judges. I didn't get that drum thrown because that guy knew this guy. I didn't get the girl because always somebody else's fault. Cynicism, that's easy. That's great. That's one of the perks of cynicism. You don't have to take responsibility for anything. You have to let that go. All right. You have to own your thoughts. You have to own your speech. You have to own your perceptions. Next thing you've got to do when you recognize the cynicism, you've got to flip it. You've got to flip it and see the good. I've had to do this because I grew up an enormously judgmental person. Christianity made me that way. All right, I know I'm being, in a sense, cynical, saying it's Christianity's fault, but it was programmed into me, and then I went along with it, and then I had to take responsibility. Geez, I'm a judgmental asshole. I should stop that. And then I had to play this game, actually a conscious game, where if I thought something negative about something or someone, I had to immediately say something positive, even if it's just in my own head. Right? That driver in front of me is a friggin' idiot. Well, at least that driver is not endangering people. And that driver at the stop sign who took too long to go. Well, full stop. Got to give him that. Begin to see the positive. And this becomes difficult. I understand. You see some political stuff, which is frigging awful. And there is no redeeming quality. There is no silver lining around that. You find maybe silver lining in, well, there is some mechanism for us to combat that. There's some way for us to counter that. There is some potential for a different outcome. I don't know. It's very, very difficult. I didn't say this stuff is easy. I just say it's important to begin to see the positive side of things. My back is still in spasm. All right, so over a week now since the cottage trip, I've had to cancel pickleball 5 frigging times. What's the silver lining about that? Well, maybe there isn't one specifically, but there is a little. Silver lining is I have a chiropractor. I've been able to go to the chiropractor and get help. Well, that's a good thing. And there are certain stretches I can do, and that's a good thing. And it's been way worse in the past, and it's not as bad as that. So I've had to miss pickleball, and that's drag. But I know other people who broke their ankle and will not play pickleball for 8 months. I know somebody else who blew her ACL and will not play pickleball for over a year. Okay, I've missed a couple of weeks, but it could be a lot worse. And there is the positive side of things. There's stuff I can do. I've been able to use some of that time to work on some other things. Okay, great. Begin to see the positive side. So make the decision that you're not going to be cynical. Catch yourself when you are being cynical, and then flip whatever you're being cynical about. Or if nothing else, and this is vital, approach the world with gratitude. Now, you may not be able to do anything about policies that come out of the White House. And you may think us being in Canada, that doesn't affect us. I raise you 50% tariffs for no good reason whatsoever. Yeah, it does. And the price of gas is nearly $2 a liter. Yeah, decisions in the White House affect my frigging life. Quite apart from all of the talk of 51st state and attacks on my country's sovereignty, which is stressful and fearful and angering. Yeah, decisions in America affect me and affect everybody else in the frigging world. And you can't do anything about those decisions. We are not voters. Can you, if nothing else, enact a feeling of gratitude? I mean, that is actually number 2. Number 1 is make the decision. 2 is have a gratitude practice. Every morning, wake up. Here's 3 things that I'm grateful for today. Or when you go to bed, here's 3 things that I'm grateful for today. Approach with gratitude. The world is a gong show right now. You and I understand that. Okay, I have a roof over my head. I ate lunch today. I have gigs coming up this weekend, and there's stuff to be grateful for. My back is hurting, but I'm healthy fundamentally. I have friends in my life. My cat is healthy. Grab on to whatever gives you gratitude. And even if you don't have a direct silver lining around a cynical situation, point to whatever gratitude you can hold on to as a way to invoke the positive. as a way to invoke the good things and bring the good things into your awareness. Cynical people are overwhelmed by negativity and bitterness, and that creates a negative, bitter filter upon the world for them. And you have a reticular activating system, that part of your brain that notices your priorities. That the old saying they have, the old example they give is when you decide to buy a new car, you choose the model you want, and then all of a sudden when you're driving around, you see those cars friggin' everywhere. That's your reticular activating system focusing in on your priorities, because we can't possibly filter out all of the information in the world all the time. So your RAS latches onto what's important to you. Well, if you're coming at it with a bitter, cynical perspective, your RAS, your mind, your subconscious is going to be out there in the world looking for negative, bitter stuff to justify that opinion, to justify that belief about the world. And so gratitude brings in the positive. The more you are grateful for, the more life will make you aware of stuff to be grateful for. And if you want to get metaphysical, the more life will bring stuff to be grateful for into your life. So adopt a gratitude. Make the decision, adopt a gratitude, be self-aware, own your cynicism, where possible, flip the cynicism into something positive. Think for yourself. That's the next one. Think for yourself. Own your thoughts. I grew up in church, being taught what to think, being taught what to have judgments on, being taught who and what to feel superior to. Didn't question, was taught that if I questioned, I'd go to hell. Not just hell, like super hell, like the extra hot hell. Like if you knew the truth and you rejected it, you'd go to extra hot hell. And as George Carlin said, where your grandma's baking pies without an oven. So I was really taught not to think for myself. George Carlin had a good one. It's like kids who want to learn to read are going to learn to read. Better to teach kids to question what they read. We're not taught to question. I was not taught to question because to question would bring the whole edifice down. And so they scared you. If you question, you're going to extra hot hell. Extra hot hell. And so I was not taught to question. And so I soaked in the judgment, cynicism of the world I was living in. That became my perception. I didn't question it until I got much older and got some distance from that and matured a little bit and began to learn how to own my own perception, began to learn to take responsibility for my own thoughts, my own behavior, the things that I do and think about the world. And you need to think for yourself. If you have been taught cynicism, or if you are all the time hanging around a group of people who are doing nothing with their lives, who are complaining about their wives all the time, who are bitter about their jobs, who are bitter about politics, who think everyone's an idiot. If you are in that culture, if you are in that world, a lot of people just absorb the prevailing thoughts of the group. They don't think for themselves. Well, you've already begun to do that. If you took step one, which is the decision to not be cynical anymore, you're already beginning to think for yourself. You're already separating from the herd. And so in a mental way, separate, question your own beliefs. And if you catch yourself being cynical, ask yourself, where's that coming from? I think every driver on the road is an idiot who goes 10 kilometers slower than me. Where'd that come from? Well, you were taught that. You learned that from people driving with you, from your parents, from TV, from movies, whatever. You learned that behavior. You wouldn't call that person an idiot if you were talking to them. Probably a really nice person. Get behind the wheel of your car, everybody's an idiot because you have learned this aggressive, awful behavior and you haven't questioned it. So question it. You find yourself being cynical about somebody, question it. Why are you cynical about that? What is it touching in you? What belief is it sparking for you? This is thinking about yourself. This is beginning to think for yourself. And do you agree with it? Do you agree with what everybody around you is saying? And if you don't, you're beginning to separate yourself from the pack. And if the pack is negative, you want to be separated from it. And that's the next thing. The next thing, the last one was separate yourself mentally and think for yourself. You may need to separate yourself physically. You may need to get away from certain people who feed your pessimism, certain people who feed your cynicism. people who feed your negativity. This stuff is delicious. This stuff tastes great. Passing judgment on another person so as to inflate your own superiority feels great. Feels great in the moment, becomes an addiction. And if you've got people around you who are just feeding that, people around you who are discouraging you from the pursuit of your dreams, who are making fun of the pursuit of your dreams, who belittle your dreams, people around you who are bitching about their spouse all the time, and you buy into that, or bitching about their coworkers or their job or whatever, and you join in on that without thinking, but you reach this point where you don't want to be that anymore, you may need to get away from those people. You may need to find and surround yourself with more positive people. And I've been very lucky. And it's an interesting thing. I think once you dedicate yourself to this pursuit, life will begin to bring the people into your life who can help you. People into your life who will lead you into a better perception. And that's happened with me, especially through music. You know, one of my great things, probably the greatest gift that music has given me, apart from all the work I've been able to do on attachment and self-doubt and confidence and the experiences I've had playing all over the place, the great gift has been the people. The people who have come into my life in music, who are the principal people in my life now, who are optimistic, who are positive, who, despite all the heinous BS in the music biz that will turn you cynical in a heartbeat if you let it, they are artists. They are aspirants. They are spiritual. The people who have come into my life have taught me how to not be cynical, or they have taught me at least to be cynical in a restrained way, and then let it go. Sometimes you need to have a moan about things and then move on, you know? And I've been surrounded for the last 15 years by some of the most aspirational, most hopeful, most spiritual people that I've ever met in my life. And they have lifted me. And I have tried my best to lift others as well, away from cynicism into this hope, into this optimism, into this idea that life can be really great and things are possible. And I've watched them with my own eyes prove that things are possible. So it may not be enough to separate yourself mentally from the crowd. You may have to separate yourself physically from the crowd. Find people who feed you just a little bit better. And it's going to be worth it. It's going to be worth it because your life will change. Now, if you want to get metaphysical and we attract, they say that the universe, that life is just a mirror. And if you want to attract positive things, if you want to attract things to be grateful for, then you need to acknowledge, recognize, focus on, be grateful for the positive things. And if you steep yourself in negativity, if you steep yourself in darkness, if you steep yourself in bitterness, your product will be that. Darkness and bitterness. Everything you see will be darkness and bitterness. I had that experience working for the cops. I was immersed in crime, and that was very emotional and frightening. And very quickly, everything I saw everywhere in the world was crime. Every person I saw was a potential criminal. Everything I saw was a crime scene. And there seemed to be danger lurking everywhere because that is the filter that I put upon myself. My perception, I affixed the danger filter, the crime filter, and then that's all I saw everywhere. And it partly led to my anxiety breakdown. The world is not that. The world is 5% that. But again, if you affix that cynical filter, all you see is stuff to be cynical about. And it's not a great way to live. And it doesn't bring opportunity into your life. It doesn't bring empowerment into your life. It doesn't give you what you need to go for your dreams. And so do these things. If you don't want to be cynical anymore, if you want to experience a more positive life, if you want to affix a more positive perception of life so as to see more positivity in the world, so as to attract more positivity into your frigging life, do these things. Make the decision, practice the gratitude, catch yourself being cynical, reverse that, start thinking for yourself, and where necessary, separate yourself from the cynical pack. And give yourself some damn good music to listen to. We're doing it very quick. This is already way too long. I want to make these episodes shorter, and it just never seems to happen. It's my particular idiom, I guess. But I find it apropos this week that I've got a fun song. A lot of the songs that I put out there are kind of moody folk songs or moody shoegaze songs. And in this case, I'm giving you just a fun one that I encountered this week. And it is a modern day UK glam metal band called Roxy Red. Roxy Red, baby. And they have a brand new song out. That's ROXXI space RED. A new song. They're quick to tell us their first ballad called Remember Me. And it's difficult to find out information about this band. They are from the UK. That's all I know for sure. I'm not sure where in the UK. They've been around for a few years. They've released a bunch of singles. Don't, to my knowledge, have an EP or a record yet. I will give you a bio I found. Roxy Red are the UK's most notorious glam rock band. The darkness might argue that. And represent nothing but a good time. There's a Poison reference for you with their sleazy in-your-face image. That's true. Along with their larger-than-life sound, these guys will guarantee everyone the time of their lives. Their proficiency to match the sound and energy of notorious bands such as Motley Crue, Poison Rats, Cinderella, along with their own material, makes them one of the best glam metal bands out there right now. The Hangover, rock anthems that are so catchy, they'll make your brain itch for days. So they released this song called Remember Me. It is a ballad, and I know they present as a 80s glam rock band. This one, for me at least in the introduction and the vocal, more of an REO Speedwagon vibe for me, or a Styx vibe. Kind of that late 70s thing. The vocals to me sounded a bit Dennis DeYoung. At least in the opening section, clean guitar and vocals. And then just a really great pre-chorus. A really great chorus. Very hooky. And it's just fun. And there's a lot of glam metal happening right now. And it seems to be separated into two camps. It's people who are doing it seriously and taking it seriously up to a point, all right? Rock and roll is supposed to be fun, and that is always the ethos, even when it's kind of serious. But bands who are writing serious songs and taking them seriously, and then bands that are more having fun with it, epitomized by Steel Panther. Now everybody goes to that extreme. But we have, I think, that side of the equation with Roxy Red. Like the singer, I assume that's a wig. It's like the spiked up blonde and black hair, and it's like a silver vest on and gloves, doing the look, and the dudes have long hair, whatever. And it's just fun. And I think it's got a great hook. I think it's got a great chorus, some really nice guitar work, and more of an REO Speedwagon vibe, though, for me, at least in the beginning. I listened to some of their other stuff. I get a distinct Motley Crue off of some of their other stuff. I get, in this song, in the guitar solo, Bonfire, that will be a pretty obscure reference to some of you. You have to have gone pretty deep in the culture to know what I mean when I say Bonfire. But those of you who know will recognize some Bonfire in the guitar solo. And yeah, it's just good fun. You know, the video's fun. It's a little bit funny. There's like a story that runs through it. And then there's shots of the band playing live, and the background is pink and purple. It's glam, man. And it gleefully embraces glam. And I think it's actually kind of a fun song. And I like their other tunes too. Definitely a Rat vibe on some of them. Motley Crue vibe on some of it. And the early stuff. You know, this is more akin to the early 80s, the very origins, the very beginning of that whole glam metal scene. It sounded different in 82, 83, 84 than it did in 88, 89. Got more polished, whatever. This is a bit more raw. Sounds more like the early days. And that's why Rat. That's why Motley Crue. And I think it's fun. So the song of the week is Remember Me by Roxy Red. I will put that on the Semi-Eloquent podcast, referenced on the Pod 2026 playlist on Spotify. Lots of great stuff on there. If you have not checked out the playlist, do. There's a lot of good, like, I don't know, 50 or 60 songs on it now. Some of them brand new, some of them older stuff we've talked about. But there's a great depository. There's a great collection of music on that playlist that deserves to be heard. And if you have not signed up for my Substack, Semi-Eloquent you can sign up for free. Put in your email address and you'll get an episode companion from me every week where I'll just send you Roxy Red's damn video and you can watch it. And a little bit of extra stuff that goes with the episode, some explanations. I'll point you to stuff I'm talking about here. And it's a way for me to own an audience a little bit better than doing this through social media, whatever. I'll send the episode links to you. You don't have to go looking. You just click on the newsletter and there it is. Please join me on Substack. I'm thinking about doing more writing on Substack. I've had just a mild itch to write a little bit, although I don't know about what exactly. But every week I can promise you an episode companion. And there's stuff going on the Substack community that I'm trying to build. So please consider joining. Please consider a rating and review of the podcast on Apple, Spotify, wherever. The mug contest is over. Nobody entered the mug contest. I told you it was the highest percentage lottery you would ever play, and yet you were too cynical to play it. But I'm finding homes for the mugs. Ratings and reviews are always welcome. Share the episodes if they're helping you. Tell your friggin' friends. This is a very grassroots thing, especially for us indies. It's very much a word of mouth thing. Please share the episodes. Please tell your friends. Thank you for supporting. Thank you for listening. If this cynicism thing is bugging you, take some of this advice. It really does make a difference. And I will say again that I recently completed coaching training. I am considering stepping into coaching a little bit. I do need some test clients. So if you want a little free coaching around cynicism, hit me up and we'll talk about what we might be able to do. That's it. I got to go. This is too frigging long. Thanks for listening. Hope you've had a good week and best of luck. Best of luck combating your cynicism. I think it helps to have a positive mindset, helps to have a happy heart, and perhaps Roxy Red can help you with that. Good things happen when you put yourself out there, kids. Do not let the cynicism hold you back. I'll talk to you soon.